Welcome to Westchester, a beautiful town in Pennsylvania. But it hasn't always been Westchester. Westchester was originally named Turks Head. That's an out-of-place name, but it makes a little more sense when you know that Turks Head Village was named after the tavern it surrounded, the Turks Head Inn, which was named after its sign, a painted bust of a Turkish man. In 1701, a ship captain named Nathaniel Puckle bought this land from the guy himself, William Penn. And in 1760, there were 4 whole farms here. Obviously, this blew. So, Phineas Eakes, wanting to liven the place up a little bit, made a tavern in 1762. His grandfather, Robert Eakes, was actually the first European in Chester County. Before Phineas could get his tavern, he needed to get a license. Licensing of inns and taverns could only be done through the state, and because Penn was very Quaker about most things, each license had to be individually approved by the governor. The Quakers, not being the biggest fans of booze, needed some convincing. There were generally 4 things that you could do to help your case. Be of good moral character, not be a general nuisance, prove the inn would benefit travelers, and use your tragic backstory. Quakers were more likely to approve widows or veterans. Phineas Eakes had to apply multiple times for a license for a tavern, presumably because he only fulfilled one of these requirements: the need for a tavern. He opened the tavern in an old, abandoned building that he got for cheap, that even in the 1790s was being referred to as ancient. He never officially named the place, but all the locals knew it as Turks Head due to the sign. These signs are a common feature of the taverns at the time. The Chester County History Center has a sign from the Turks Head Tavern from the 1800s. The museum curator of the History Center shared that in 2011, members of the Iraqi Conservation Institute came to Westchester as part of a museum exchange program. They explained that the Turks Head sign could be traced back to the Crusades and the resulting tavern signs in Britain, enticing tavern goers with stories from the Crusades. While it had the sign and everyone called it Turks Head, Phineas never officially named it this. And then, after 6 years, well... Phineas frequently got into trouble with the Quaker elders, having to write out formal written apologies multiple times. This went from bad to worse when, running his small, nameless tavern that was supposed to be making money, he got into debt. The Quakers did the regular practice of sending a fellow Quaker businessman to help him figure it out, but when that man got there, he found that Phineas had skipped town. His house and land was sold to make up for the debts. Then the remaining money was given to his children and his wife, leaving Phineas with one singular dollar. He then disappeared from the historical record. Classic Phineas. The second owner of the tavern, John Clark, was a better businessman than Phineas, which is honestly a low bar to pass. So he made sure to put down the name of the tavern when he got the license. Turks Head Inn and Tavern was officially legally born.
This place must have been bumping, because rapidly, a small trading town developed around it.
Soon enough, people just started calling the town Turks Head.
Now that we know the origins of Turks Head and its tavern, let's go through some fast facts before the name switches over to Westchester.
In 1772, John Harper ran the tavern before he left to go get free land in Kentucky.
From 1774 to 1776, right at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, John Jacobs was in charge of the tavern. This is hilarious, because in a time where taverns were well known for harboring revolutionary spirit, John Jacobs was a loyalist. He got arrested in Philadelphia while trying to join the British, and was only bailed out by his friend who was a general for the Americans. He then went back to the British to narc on which farms were the best to steal from. In 1786, Turks Head becomes the seat of Chester County and gets its own courthouse, making more people come, making business more profitable.
In 1789, one tavern keeper, Peter Mather, wrote in his petition for a license renewal that, quote, "Your petitioner hath provided himself with every requisite to entertain judges, jurors, suitors, neighbors, and gentlemen and ladies of every profession and denomination." In the petition, "ladies of every profession" is crossed out, and lawyers was scribbled in instead.
Next to run the tavern was Major John Harper from 1792 to 98, back from Kentucky. Earlier that decade, he had actually held the Chester County Courthouse hostage with a cannon under the near-lawless Articles of Confederation, which had no power to enforce pretty much anything. But that's a different story. Also at this time, a rival tavern called Washington House Inn was opened up by the well-respected Colonel John Hannum, right next to the courthouse. Colonel John got a little too caught up in his own hype though, and was convicted of taking a group of men in broad daylight to the courthouse to tear down a 7-foot-tall courthouse window, brick it back up, make another hole in the courthouse, and use that hole to create a walkway between the courthouse and his tavern. He had to fix the damage with his own money, and eventually his tavern closed. Benjamin Bennett owns the place into the 19th century, where, finally, in 1799, Turks Head is incorporated officially as a borough, and switches its official name to Westchester, as it is west of Chester.
But Westchester residents still pay homage to their Turks Head roots. Turks Head Cafe, Turks Head Music Festival, and recently, Turks Head Wines. And just like when Westchester was only 4 farms and a tavern selling food to travelers, it still feels like the only business you can find in this town is a restaurant. Cheers.